He thought it was a blind date, until the girl whispered, "I'm just here to say thank you." The cafe was quiet, polished, and full of polished people. Jordan Hale pushed open the glass door, the chime overhead soft and unobtrusive. He stepped inside, tailored suit sharp, silver watch catching the late afternoon light. Every inch of him screamed control, of time, of appearances, of emotion. He scanned the room with practiced indifference. His assistant had texted the name of the place. His best friend, Evan, had insisted, "Just one blind date, man. You need this." "You'll thank me." Jordan had rolled his eyes, but here he was, showing up simply because he did not like to break commitments, even meaningless ones. His gaze stopped when he saw her. At a corner table near the window sat a woman, young, delicate, and still as if she belonged to another world entirely. Her blonde hair flowed in soft waves past her shoulders, catching bits of golden light. She wore a white dress, simple, elegant, and her hands rested quietly in her lap. When their eyes met, Jordan felt an odd flicker in his chest, like something long asleep trying to stir. She stood as he approached, offering a small, gentle smile. Up close, her features came into focus, blue-gray eyes that held something unspoken, something fragile. She did not extend a hand to shake. Instead, she looked at him as if she had known him before. "Jordan Hale?" she asked softly, already knowing the answer. He nodded. "Yes, and you must be?" She shook her head slightly and looked down, a breath escaping her lips like she was gathering something from within. Then, lifting her eyes to meet his once more, she stepped closer. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper, soft, intimate, heartbreaking. "I'm just here to say thank you and goodbye." The words landed between them like a stone in still water. Jordan blinked, his mouth parting slightly. He did not know what he had expected, a laugh, a compliment, maybe awkward small talk over overpriced espresso. Not this. Not a goodbye, before the beginning had even begun. He studied her face, but she gave him nothing more than that serene, bittersweet smile. Her hands remained folded at her waist. She seemed calm, but her eyes, those pale, weary eyes, told him she had rehearsed this moment more than once. "Wait," he said instinctively. "Do I know you?" She didn't answer. Instead, she gestured lightly to the chair across from her. "Would you sit? Just for a minute. I promise I won't keep you long." He hesitated. Logic told him to walk away. Whatever this was, it was not what he signed up for, but something deeper, something less practiced, anchored him in place. Jordan nodded slowly, then pulled out the chair and sat across from the girl with the golden hair and goodbye in her voice. And the moment he did, something, he could not yet name what, began to change. Jordan Hale did not believe in nostalgia. The past, to him, was a locked room, visited only when necessary, and never for long. He had built his life like a fortress, solid, forward-moving, precise. At 34, he was the youngest marketing CEO in the city's top firm, known for ruthless efficiency and a reputation so clean it was almost sterile. People admired him. They feared him a little, but no one really knew him. Not that he minded. He had grown up in the foster system, bounced between homes, schools, and expectations he never quite fit. The only constants were books and the quiet escape they gave him. In his final year of college, between internships and night classes, he signed up for a volunteer program to read to children at a local group home, not out of passion, just to fill the hours and check a box. Across the table, Claire Bennett watched him carefully. Her heart thudded against her ribs, but on the surface, she was calm. She had spent weeks rehearsing this moment. Months, if she was honest. She had first seen Jordan again in a newspaper article about rising CEOs. His name triggered something deep in her memory, something she thought she had imagined until she saw the photo. Same jawline, same unreadable eyes, Same man who once read fairy tales to a forgotten girl under flickering library lights. Finding him had been easier than she expected. A friend from the group home still worked in social services and quietly pulled strings. A few emails, a canceled meeting, a rescheduled coffee. All carefully designed to lead to this moment. She had not come to ask for help, not even to reconnect. She had come to say thank you. Because when the doctors told her the cancer was spreading, when the future started slipping through her fingers like sand, she realized something terrifying. She had lived a whole life without ever really being remembered. Except by him. That 1 hour a week had mattered more than he knew. She had held on to it like a lifeline, not because he said anything extraordinary, but because he kept coming back, because he had kept his word. And when you grow up, always waiting for people to leave, someone who stays, even briefly, becomes unforgettable. Claire had no family. Her daughter, Maisie, was 4 years old. Sweet, curious, with the same bright blonde curls Claire had once hated in the mirror but now adored in her little girl. Maisie was her whole world. But even love like that could not cure what was growing inside her. So Claire made peace. Almost. But there was still one promise left to be fulfilled. "You once said," she would later tell him, "if you ever feel alone, just find me." She had remembered. Every word. And now, after all these years, she had. Claire took a slow breath, her fingers resting lightly on the edge of the table. The air between them felt dense, filled with unsaid things. Jordan sat opposite her, still unsure what to make of her presence, why she had come, what this "thank you" really meant. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I know this must feel strange." He gave a cautious nod. "A little, yeah." Claire offered a small smile, but it faded quickly. Her gaze shifted to the window beside them, where late afternoon sunlight streamed in through gauzy curtains. "When I was 10, she began. "I lived in a group home not far from here. I was one of those kids nobody really noticed. I wasn't loud, I wasn't difficult, I just blended into the background. A quiet girl with a library card and no one waiting for her." Jordan didn't speak. He simply watched her, his fingers tapping once against the side of his coffee cup. Every Wednesday, a college student came to read to us. Most kids didn't care. Some made fun of him. But she paused, smiling to herself. "I waited for Wednesdays. Because for 1 hour, someone read just for me." Her voice trembled slightly. "It was you, Jordan." He looked at her, brows furrowing. Memory tugged at him faintly, like a photograph under too much light. A blonde girl in the corner, the quiet one who never asked for anything. He hadn't remembered her name. But her eyes, he recognized those eyes now. Claire continued, her tone steady but soft. "You never knew me, not really, but you showed up every week, and you read fairy tales like they mattered, like I mattered. You kept your word, even when no one else in my life ever did." She paused again, then looked directly into his eyes. "A few months ago, I was diagnosed with late-stage cancer." Jordan blinked. The words landed like a punch to the chest, abrupt and impossible to process. "They say I may have a year, maybe less." Silence followed, heavy and raw. Claire folded her hands in her lap, her shoulders tense. "When I got the news, the first thing I felt wasn't fear. It was emptiness. Like I had lived all these years, and still, no one would remember me when I'm gone. I've worked, I've raised my daughter, I've paid bills, smiled at strangers, but I still felt invisible." Her eyes shimmered, not from weakness, but from an aching honesty. "But then I thought of you, of Wednesdays, of how one person showing up made me feel seen. It gave me something to hold on to when everything else slipped away." She inhaled shakily, gathering strength. "So I came here, not to make you feel guilty, not to ask for anything. I just needed to thank you, because you were the first person who ever made me feel like I existed." Claire's voice cracked slightly as she added, almost a whisper. When you walked in today, when you actually showed up, after all these years, it reminded me I still have worth, that I still matter. Jordan felt his throat tighten. He sat very still, unsure what to say, what to feel. He'd spent his life avoiding moments like this, messy, emotional, real. But there was something undeniable in the way she looked at him. Not like a stranger, not even like someone who expected anything more. Just gratitude, raw and pure. I didn't remember, he admitted softly. Not until just now. But I do. I remember the way you sat in the back. You never spoke. Claire smiled gently. I didn't have to. You were already saying everything I needed to hear. Jordan looked down at his hands, then back up at the woman across from him, the woman who had carried his kindness like a treasure for over a decade. And in that moment, he realized, some promises echo far louder than we ever expect. A sudden afternoon rain poured down just as Jordan was walking Claire out of the cafe. The blonde woman staggered slightly, her face pale. Before he could even ask what was wrong, she collapsed right there on the sidewalk. Without hesitation, Jordan rushed forward to catch her, his arm wrapped around her shoulders, shielding her from the downpour with his own jacket. People inside the cafe watched, an unusual and tender sight, as if the man known for his cold demeanor had suddenly revealed something soft, something even he had not known he carried. He brought Claire back to a small apartment in a quiet suburban neighborhood. The home was modest but warm, and carried a faint scent of vanilla in the air. He had just laid her gently down on the sofa when a small voice called out from a back room. "Mommy, are you home?" A little girl with soft, curly blonde hair ran out, wearing a pink floral dress and clutching a teddy bear half her size. Her bright blue eyes sparkled as she stared in surprise at the stranger in her living room. Jordan bent down slightly, his voice unusually unsure. "Hey there, your mom wasn't feeling well. She's resting now." The little girl looked at him for a few seconds, then stepped forward and held out her teddy bear. "You can stay, Mr. Stranger. Mommy says it's rude to leave someone alone in the rain." Claire stirred slightly, opening her eyes. When she saw her daughter, she gave a faint, tired smile. "Maisie, honey, say thank you to the man who helped Mommy." Maisie tilted her head, her eyes shining like stars. "Thank you, mister. You have kind eyes." Jordan froze for a beat. The child's simple words pierced through the hardened shell he had worn for years. He could not remember the last time anyone had told him that he had kind eyes. In that moment, Jordan saw something in the little girl's gaze, something eerily familiar. It was the same look Claire had given him all those years ago when she was a quiet, skinny girl in the group home. That look had made him stay 5 extra minutes just to finish the last page of a fairy tale. Now, he saw it again, in this child. A strange feeling stirred in his chest. It was not pity, not even affection. It was something deeper, a natural instinct to protect, to stay, to care. "I've never really been someone's anything," Jordan thought to himself. "But maybe I can be someone who makes this little girl feel safe." Later, when Claire stirred again, Jordan gently poured a glass of water, placed a pill on a small porcelain dish, and turned to Maisie with a soft voice. "Your mom needs rest. Could you be my helper and bring this to her?" Maisie nodded eagerly, lifting the glass carefully in both hands like it was something precious. She set it on the table beside her mother and smiled. Jordan watched the moment unfold, and a quiet smile passed across his lips, a smile he did not know he still had. The next day, Jordan returned with a container of warm porridge and some vitamins. He had only planned to drop them off quickly, but the door flew open the moment he knocked, and Maisie came rushing out. "Mommy, he's back." Without thinking, she wrapped her arms around Jordan's leg, looked up, and beamed. "You came back. Mommy, is he my daddy?" The air went still. Claire froze, her face flushed with surprise and embarrassment. Jordan gave a tight, awkward smile, about to clarify, but then he saw Claire's eyes, glassy, struggling to hold back tears. He slowly knelt down, placed a hand on Maisie's head, and spoke in a gentle whisper. "No, sweetheart, I'm just a friend, but I'll always be here to help your mommy, okay?" Maisie nodded happily and ran back inside, proudly showing off her newly stitched teddy bear. Jordan stood up, watching the little girl disappear down the hall. Inside him, something unnamed rose to the surface, a strange peace he had never known in all his luxury apartments and business-class flights. She was not his daughter. But in those clear, innocent eyes, he saw something life had long since taken from him, the meaning of being needed. And he knew then he would come back. Not out of duty, but because of something he had never dared to believe before. Maybe I can become someone that feels like home. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that made small sounds feel enormous. Every tick of the wall clock, every distant honk from the street below. Claire sat on the couch, a blanket pulled around her shoulders. The rain had stopped earlier that morning, but her fingers still trembled. Jordan was in the kitchen, silently rinsing 2 cups. He had stayed longer than expected. Again, neither of them had spoken much since he arrived. But the silence between them had shifted, from unfamiliar to something almost patient. Claire cleared her throat. "There's something I need to tell you." Jordan turned to face her. He nodded once, setting the cup down without a sound. She didn't look at him when she spoke. "I have cancer. Stage 4. It's in my ovaries, but it's spreading." The words hung in the air like smoke. "I've tried treatment, chemo, natural therapies, prayers. They say I might have a few months, maybe a year. But," her voice faltered, "I've stopped counting." Jordan didn't move. He didn't even blink, but his jaw clenched. Claire continued, quieter now. "I've made arrangements, a will, a letter for Maisie to read when she's older, and papers to have her transferred to a foster care center when the time comes." "No family?" Jordan asked, voice low. Claire shook her head. "None that would take her, or want to." There was no self-pity in her voice, only resignation. "I didn't come to you to ask for anything," she added quickly. "I came because before I leave, I wanted to do one thing that made me feel seen, saying thank you to the only person who ever made me feel like I mattered." That was enough. But as she said it, her voice cracked, and for the first time since their reunion, Jordan saw it, the deep, raw fear behind her strength. "I'm scared," she admitted, barely audible. "Not of dying, but of disappearing, of being forgettable, and of Maisie growing up thinking she wasn't worth staying for." Jordan stepped closer, but said nothing. Claire looked up at him, eyes shining. "You don't have to say anything. I just needed someone to know." But Jordan didn't let the moment slip away. That night, he stayed until Maisie fell asleep, curled up on the rug beside her mother's chair. He watched Claire drift off too, her breathing shallow, her fingers still gently wrapped around her daughter's. He sat in the quiet darkness of the apartment for a long time. And then he made a decision. Without telling her, he reached out to a contact he had met during a past campaign in Switzerland, a leading oncologist known for advanced, aggressive treatment options. He sent Claire's full medical file, lab results, and scans. He stayed up, reviewing hospital policies, insurance loopholes, treatment outcomes. By dawn, he had arranged a virtual consultation and wired the deposit personally. The next evening, Jordan came back. Claire looked better. Not by much, but enough. Her skin had color. Her eyes had questions. He sat beside her, not speaking for a while. Then, turning to her, he asked softly, "Do you want to live?" She blinked, startled by the bluntness. Jordan didn't look away. I'm not asking because I need you to fight. I'm asking because no one should have to prepare for death without someone asking them first if they want to stay." Claire's lips trembled. And then, tears. Not the broken, desperate kind, but the kind that came from being seen, from being given permission to hope. "That's the first time," she whispered, choking slightly, "anyone's asked me that." Jordan didn't reply. He didn't need to. He had already started giving her the answer. The months that followed were a blur of airports, hospital corridors, and long nights where silence held more weight than words. Jordan had never imagined his life would lead him here, pushing a wheelchair through a cancer ward in Lyon, France, speaking broken French to nurses, and learning how to cook chicken broth that wouldn't upset Claire's stomach. He had thought he was just helping. He told himself that in the beginning, but somewhere between folding her scarves after chemo and brushing Maisie's hair into tiny pigtails before school, something changed. He started to belong. Claire's treatment began almost immediately after they arrived in France. The doctors had reviewed her file and agreed to take a risk, an aggressive surgery followed by 6 months of chemotherapy. Jordan was there for every scan, every consult, every late-night breakdown. He remembered one night in particular, Claire curled up in the hospital bed, shivering despite the layers of blankets, her skin pale, lips dry, eyes dim. She had whispered, barely audible, "I don't want Maisie to remember me like this." Jordan had sat beside her, held her hand, and said quietly, "She won't. She'll remember you as the bravest person she's ever known." And he meant it. At home, he took over everything: meals, meds, laundry, school runs, story time, grocery shopping, scheduling appointments, sitting up with Claire when the pain wouldn't let her sleep. Maisie became his little shadow, always close, always watching. She never cried. But she would sometimes sit silently next to Claire, holding her mother's hand, as if her tiny presence alone could keep the sickness at bay. And she drew. So many drawings, crayon portraits taped on the fridge, Jordan, Claire, and herself. A house with a red door and a big window, a yard with flowers and trees. Above every picture she wrote in uneven letters, "My family." Jordan used to flinch when he saw those words. At first, it felt like pretending. But eventually, it didn't. It felt real. Some nights, after Maisie had gone to bed, Jordan would sit on the couch with Claire wrapped in a soft blanket beside him, her head against his chest, her breath slow. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. He would look at her, this woman who had once been a frail memory from a volunteer day, and realize how fiercely he wanted her to live. He didn't know when he'd fallen in love. Maybe it was the moment Claire tried to smile through the nausea just to thank him for the soup. Maybe it was when she reached for his hand during a scan. Maybe it was when Maisie called out for him in the middle of the night, and he held her until she fell back asleep. Or maybe it wasn't one moment. Maybe love had quietly woven itself through all of it, thread by thread, until he couldn't tell where caring ended and something deeper began. Then came the day everything changed. Claire sat on the hospital bed, thin but glowing with the strength of someone who had endured hell and made it back. Jordan stood beside her, Maisie perched in his arms with her goggled teddy bear. The doctor entered with a smile and a folder. "Your scans are clear," he said. "The tumor has shrunk completely. There are no signs of active cancer." Claire stared at him, lips parted. Jordan's knees nearly gave out. She turned to him, tears already brimming. "Jordan, did you hear that?" He couldn't speak, couldn't think. He set Maisie down gently, stepped forward, and wrapped Claire in his arms. He didn't care who saw, didn't care if his voice cracked or if his tears soaked her hair. He just held her. And in that moment, Jordan Hale, former CEO, man of logic, orphan boy who never trusted emotions, cried. Not for loss, but for life. Because for the first time, he saw a future. A future that wasn't made of numbers or deadlines, but of quiet mornings, school runs, pink dresses, and Claire's hand in his. He had come to help. But somehow, along the way, he had found home. The small park buzzed with laughter and the soft clinking of paper cups and balloons dancing in the breeze. It was a perfect spring day, sunlight filtering through the trees, scattering gold over picnic blankets and white folding chairs. Pink and white streamers fluttered above a long table lined with party favors. In the center stood a 3-tier birthday cake adorned with sugar flowers and a miniature figurine of a little blonde girl in a pink dress. Maisie turned 4 last year. Today, she was 5, and her world was exactly as she had dreamed it would be. She ran in circles with 2 other kids from the neighborhood, her pink floral dress twirling as she laughed, frosting on her chin and glitter in her hair. Claire stood a few feet away, talking with a neighbor. She wore a flowing white dress, her blonde hair soft in the wind. There was color in her cheeks again, a light in her smile that had not been there a year ago. Health looked good on her. So did hope. Jordan watched them both from a short distance, one hand in his pocket, the other clutching something small and silent. He had planned every detail, down to the pink lemonade in mason jars, the soft jazz playing on the Bluetooth speaker, and the little white bench placed right under the cherry blossom tree. It was time. He called out gently, "Claire?" She turned. The way she looked at him now was different than the first time they met again. No fear, no sadness. Just warmth. He walked toward her and stopped when Maisie spotted him. "Mr. Jordan," she squealed, rushing over. He smiled and bent down, scooping her up into his arms. "Having fun, birthday girl?" "The most," she beamed. Then she whispered, cupping her hand to his ear, "Mommy looks like a princess today." He chuckled. "She really does." He set her down gently and turned to Claire. There was a pause, and then he slowly lowered himself to one knee. Gasps rippled through the nearby guests. Claire froze. Jordan pulled a small velvet box from his pocket and opened it. The diamond inside wasn't enormous, but it sparkled like it carried 1,000 quiet promises. He looked up at her, eyes unwavering. "I know you didn't come into my life to fall in love," he began. "You came to say goodbye. And I came to that cafe thinking I was doing someone a favor by showing up." He paused, his voice quiet. "But that day changed everything. You changed everything. You and Maisie taught me what it means to stay, to feel, to belong." Claire's eyes filled. Jordan's voice softened even more. "I don't need perfect. I don't need promises you can't make. I just need this, to wake up and know that we're still trying together." He smiled, almost shyly. "So I'm asking you now." He turned slightly, glancing at Maisie, who was holding her breath beside them. "Will you stay, not just for today but for every day after?" Claire's hand flew to her mouth. Maisie shouted, throwing her hands in the air. "Say yes, Mommy, so we can all be a family." The crowd laughed and clapped. A breeze lifted Claire's hair as she took a trembling step forward. She looked at Jordan, her heart full. Then she nodded, whispering, "Yes." Jordan stood, slipping the ring onto her finger. Maisie ran into their legs, hugging them both tightly. And as laughter and applause surrounded them, the 3 of them stood under the cherry blossoms, finally, truly, completely, together. The city skyline faded in the rearview mirror as they drove into the countryside, a winding road lined with wildflowers and gentle hills, where time seemed to move a little slower. The honking horns and glass towers of the city were behind them now, replaced by quiet fields, wooden fences, and the occasional deer pausing to watch their car pass by. It wasn't just a change of scenery. It was a reset. Jordan Hale no longer wore tailored suits. The man once defined by polished shoes and power meetings had slowly disappeared. He had traded them for rolled-up sleeves, worn-in boots, and a softness in his expression that no one from his boardroom days would have recognized. His hair, once immaculately styled, was now tousled by the wind as he stepped out each morning to water the flower boxes on their porch. He had stepped down from his CEO position 6 months ago. No press release, no dramatic farewell. Just a quiet decision, made over tea at the kitchen table, holding Claire's hand, listening to Maisie laugh in the background. It was a decision not of sacrifice, but of clarity. He was choosing presence over power, peace over prestige. They moved into a small town nestled between 2 rivers, where the neighbors still waved from their porches and knew your name by the second meeting. The corner bakery sent over fresh bread when they arrived. The postman left welcome notes in the mailbox. Within weeks, they had become known simply as the family with the little girl in pink. Maisie was now 6. Her backpack slightly too big for her frame, blonde curls bouncing as she skipped to school. On her first day of first grade, she wore her favorite pink dress, the one with tiny white flowers stitched along the hem, and carried a lunchbox that Jordan had packed himself. Inside, a peanut butter sandwich cut into stars, carrot sticks, and a note in his unmistakably neat handwriting. "You're my sunshine. Love, Dad." Claire had grown stronger with each passing day. Her cheeks regained color, her laughter returned, and her hands were no longer cold from chemo but warm with life. She accepted the offer to become head librarian at the town's old library. Under her care, it bloomed again. Children came for story time, teens stayed for book clubs, and even the elderly found comfort in the soft armchairs she placed by the windows. And Jordan? He opened a bookstore. It was small, with creaky wooden floors and a bell that chimed like a whisper whenever someone entered. He named it The Promise. When asked why, he would smile and say, "It's about a story that came full circle." The shop became more than books. It became belonging, a place where people wandered in for a novel and left with a conversation, where Maisie set up a corner to recommend her top 5